Hey, my name is Chris, and in this video, I decided to make a video on how to disassemble this thing, which is the, the little cleaning station for your Philips Norelco razor. And I'm making this video because I didn't go on YouTube. This is about the problem that these things have where, the pump just stops working after a couple years. So I didn't go on YouTube. If I had, I would have seen that there's actually a really simple way to fix it without taking it apart. But, I actually got probably, 50% of the way into taking this thing apart before I went on YouTube. So I ended up having to figure out how to take it completely apart. And, so I'm making this video to show you what a complete disassembly would look like. Although, if I'm giving you advice, if your pump stops working, there's a much easier way to fix it, and I'll show you that as well. But yeah, so you probably shouldn't disassemble this thing, but if you already have, and if you got like 50% of the way through and can't figure it out, then that's what this video is about. It's just showing you how to go all the way through and get it all the way apart. And if you think it's a bad design, and you're going to leave a comment saying what a bad design it is, just remember it wasn't designed to be taken apart. It was designed to be quickly assembled. So in that regard, I think it is kind of a good design. But yeah, it was not designed to be user serviceable. So it's really difficult to take apart, but relatively easy to assemble. So that's kind of how it was designed. That was how it was designed. So I think it was a good design. That's kind of my opinion anyway. So you take the whole thing apart using a T9 Torx bit. And you kind of start, if you look here, you can see there are these little screws kind of... these little screws, there's one here, and then one here, and then a third one right here. And these are the most obvious screws to get to. So I did go ahead and remove these when I got stuck. And once these are removed, there's some other screws down in there that I tried to remove. All right, so once you get these three screws removed, you can kind of take this outer ring off. You can kind of unclip it. Oops, actually here I am unclipping the top part. You can take this piece out, that's fine. This top piece does unclip from the front, but that's not really what you want. You want to try to unclip this outer ring. And it's kind of tough to do. And that's kind of where I got stuck. I got all three of these screws out and I couldn't get the outer ring off. And this little bottom piece is supposed to be able to come out as well. But, in the instructions I found online, the guy was like, yeah, just click it and then shoot it out at full force and it'll come out. And I think that's true. And at one point I accidentally unloaded this. And it did actually come out from one of the sides, but I don't think you should do that. I think that kind of weakens it over time. So I'm going to show you how to take this thing apart without removing this first. And really it's this rear piece. This is kind of the key to it. What I found is I was able to remove pretty much all of it up to a point, and then I couldn't figure out how to get it out. So what I ended up doing is I kind of took my screwdriver and I stuck it down in there, and if you look, there are some more T9 screws way down in there. They're kind of hard to see, but I, made the mistake of, basically, reaching down in there and unscrewing some of those lower level screws. And at that point, I was fully committed to disassembling it. But yeah, let's talk about the problem. The problem is the pump stopped working. So in my mind, I was thinking, well, okay, so the pump isn't working, and I'm thinking of those little like bubbler pumps that you get in, you know, like in your fish tank or whatever, those little pumps that you put into fountains. And I thought, well, I could just replace the pump module if there's something gunked up in there. Well, that's not how it works. It actually has this little custom-made pump. You can see the kind of the impeller blades right there. And let's see if I can zoom in a little bit. Get the light on it there. Yeah, it's that little piece there. You can kind of see down in there, that little piece with the sticks. Actually, I'm going to get one of my little small tools so I can point out to you. This is the pump here, and you can see it's got like a motor inside of here, and then on the end there's these impeller blades. And you can kind of see if I stick this in there and move them, you can see they're moving freely for me. And the problem is that this little impeller gets stuck, and it'll get jammed up over time. So, so the trick is to, rather than disassembling it and trying to replace that pump, a better idea is to just simply open it up, take out the little juice box that goes inside of here, and just reach in there with some kind of a tool. I'm using this little small tool thing. You can use either side. And just reach in there and kind of manipulate that impeller blade and get it spinning again. And I did this. So once I watched a video online that showed somebody doing this, you can even kind of move it around like this and kind of swirl it around, go in both directions and get it moving again. That will fix the problem. But then, in my case, the problem came back. So I was like, all right, I'm going to disassemble this thing again and see if I can get that pump apart. You really can't do it. You can't get that pump apart. It's held in place by some plastic rivets. So if your pump doesn't work, you just shouldn't even take this thing apart. You should basically get it in there. What I did is I actually flooded the pump with some isopropyl alcohol because the problem kept coming back. So I took some isopropyl alcohol and some pipettes. So I have a whole bunch of these little pipette things, and I basically just took the alcohol out of there and just sort of dripped it into that little pump down there. So I basically kind of dripped it down in there and just sort of flooded it and then poured it out onto a paper towel and then added some more, poured it out, and that got it completely ungunked. And then, of course, I ran it with a new little cartridge, and it seemed to work really fine. And now it stays pretty much freely spinning. So that would be my advice if you have this problem. But if you're like me and you took out some screws and you're committed to disassembling it, it does just kind of pop open up here. And once you get it kind of opened up, you got to push this button in and then pop it down. So here you can see I've got it disassembled to about the point where I was before, and I could not figure out how to get this piece off. It seemed like it was just completely stuck, and it's all down to this little plug down here. So what you have to do is just push that plug in. Look how easy it is. You just push the plug in, and then this whole thing can slide down. And this is the part that just completely got me flustered the first time taking this thing apart. So once it's down like this, you can kind of turn it to the side and get it to go past those screws to get it out completely. I think I was just pushing it in like that and then popping it off. So this piece comes out, and now you can continue with the disassembly. So yeah, at this point, I would just go ahead and start removing the rest of these screws. And again, they are the T9s. So these are, man, my T9 driver is all wiggly. So yeah, get those 2 screws out. And then there's 2 screws up here. And these are the screws that I took apart the first time doing this. I took these screws off from the outside with that ring still attached, and I just could not figure out what to do next. And that's when I went online and I saw the video by this guy who showed how you can just sort of reach something in there and move that piece along. Move the impeller blades. And I thought, oh my gosh, I've wasted my time taking this thing apart. All right. So there you go. Once you get that part loose, it's really nice that they designed this thing with these little plugs. You can just unplug these from the circuit board, and that will give you access to be able to remove it. So there you go. Once those are unplugged, you can take this little plug piece and just pull it out like that, and then this bottom piece will completely disconnect from this other piece. And here you have like the little heating element. That's the heating element that heats up the blades during the cleaning cycle. The reason why I'm taking this apart again, even though I had it all together, is because I didn't assemble the pump correctly. So this is that pump mechanism, and you can kind of see it's held in with a couple more screws, and we could continue taking this thing apart. One thing I usually do is you can kind of see how these, if I close it up here, you can see how these clips hold that piece in. So if you wanted to take out that lower part, what I usually do is we'll open it up. I'll just take some kind of maybe a screwdriver or something, and just sort of stick a screwdriver down in there. I'll start with the one farthest away from the spring first. I just push it like that, and then I'll go to the top one, push it in like that, and then hopefully that'll get it to release. There we go. There's one side, and then the other. Now, am I doing less damage than if I had just unloaded it and let it shoot out? I don't know. Probably not. But I don't really want to do too much wear and tear on there. Wouldn't want it to just fly out uncontrolled every time I try to change that little thing. There it goes. There's the other side. So yeah, once those clips are released, you just pull it all the way out. Those clips come out, the springs are just kind of loose, and that makes it a lot easier to remove this pump. So there's a few more screws in here. They're the kind of silvery screws. And this screw here, and there's a black screw next to it. These screws hold this little moisture sensor, I guess, or it's some kind of a sensor here. This is like the level sensor for the inside of that juice box that tells you when you're out of juice. So that is the orange connector. One thing that's important is you don't want to move these connectors around, because if you do, then you won't remember like which one of these plugs the connectors went into. Once you put it back together, the plug kind of lines up with the connector. That's the only way I know of, because these are not labeled and they're all the same on the circuit board. So just don't bend the wires around, and then you'll be sure to get them back in the right place. But yeah, that's a sensor here, and then there's another sensor down the side of the pump that connects to these wires. The pump just has 2 wires coming out of it here. And as you can see, there is some kind of a little, like maybe a DC motor down in there, but it's held into place with these, what I would call plastic rivets. And it's kind of hard to see. I don't know if this thing is focusing correctly on that. But yeah, there are these little plastic rivets in here, 3 of them, that are holding the motor in. And that's really the problem, because that, you know, it reminds me of those old IBM Model M keyboards that have plastic rivets holding the thing together. You could crack off these plastic rivets and maybe replace them with a screw or a bolt. And that would allow you to kind of open it up and service it maybe a little more easily. You can take that motor out and then potentially get down in there into the impeller section. But yeah, that's just not the way it works. And the problem is that if I were to take these plastic rivets off, there's really not a lot of meat underneath there to put a screw. You can see how small, I don't know if you can really see that. You can see how, well, there's just not really much underneath there. It's a very skinny stud below that plastic rivet. And so there really doesn't have enough meat in there to put a screw. So that's just kind of all one assembly. And you can unscrew it. If you unscrew that screw and this screw, then this will come off, and then you can look at it. But I mean, there's no way to further disassemble it. You can't actually take this bottom piece off. It seems like it might be glued on or something like that. I mean, there could be some other way to disassemble it inside of there if you get those plastic rivets off. But like I said, I'm not going to do that because there's no easy way to bolt mod it or to get it back together without maybe just gluing it. So I figure this whole pump assembly just has to stay, you know, in one piece. So the way I cleaned this is, like I said before, I just dripped a whole bunch of isopropyl alcohol in there, you know, and I used my little tool, got it in there, and you can really, you know, spin it around and get this impeller moving again. And that's really what maintenance looks like on this thing. You just clean it when it's in this state here. And now we'll kind of talk about how to reassemble it. Mine's all clean. The reason why I'm taking this apart again is because I forgot to reconnect this into the pump correctly. And when I ran the machine, the pump just squirted that blue juice all over the counter. And it just, you know, so that was my mistake. I'll show you how to avoid that problem as we reassemble it. So yeah, I think the easiest way to reassemble this thing is we'll start by putting this back together. So this thing goes in with the plugs kind of facing this direction. So we'll get that together. I will say this about the heating element. Here, these 3 wires that go to the heating element, they have like a little punch down. So they're supposed to go into these little plastic holders. I guess it just keeps the wires separated and maybe keeps them from overheating, perhaps. I'm not sure. But I'll go ahead and put them where they're supposed to go. Yeah, this black wire goes right here, I'm pretty sure, but I'm going to put it all back together. and then we will see where all the wires line up. I can never really remember. And the pump has to go into that little hole right here. So that'll be another thing to kind of get reconnected. All right, so that's pretty much lined back up. And here you can see now that the wires are back where they belong, you can really easily see which wire goes where, you know. This one goes over here. So that's why it's a good idea not to move those wires around too much when you have it apart. Otherwise, you won't figure out how to get it back together. And here's where I really screwed up before, is that this little pump has to be pushed in to that hole up there. And if you forget to do that, you'll end up squirting the cleaning solution all over the place, and it'll be a real pain in the butt. And you'll have to take it apart again. And then maybe you can make a YouTube video afterwards showing how to reassemble it. All right, so gosh, this is hard to see on the camera. But basically, you have this weird little piece here, and it's supposed to squish into that hole down in the side here like that. So I'm just gonna push that in. It's just kind of a friction fit. I know it's not really clicking or anything like that. But it does seem to be a friction fit. Like it's holding in there pretty well. So I think that's going to be good enough. All right, so now that that's in, I'm going to plug this plug back in here. So that's all three plugs plugged back in. So now I can go ahead and start screwing these silver screws back in. Man, these El Cheapo Torx bits are so terrible, man. They're not. If I can bend that back by hand. I'll probably have to put it on a vise and just hammer it over. It's so wiggly. That is such a pain. All right, so anytime you're threading into plastic, you want to be a hero, just get it snug. Don't push it too far. All right, 2 more screws. So this is the part where you start to realize that this really is a good design. Like, people leave comments on my videos talking about what a terrible design things are. And it's like, well, you got to realize it was not designed to be disassembled. You know, it's going to be really difficult to get disassembled, but it's going to be really easy to reassemble it. That's the intention behind the design. Really not supposed to be user serviceable. And I still think this is a pretty cool design. All right, so my springs have become intertwined. Yeah, so the springs, they just kind of slide down into those holes there. And I think it's easiest to just put them back in. Actually, you know what? I'm going to do this last. Now that I think about it. It's easier to put this thing on next. A couple things. So like this plug has these little ridges on the side. So it just sort of slides in like that. And that's how it gets held in place. Just kind of sits like that, and then we should be able to just clip this thing right back in. Like that. Look at that. Just snaps together. There you go. The plug sort of clips in. You can see how that plug was designed. It's so hard to get this part off, but that plug actually clips in and it kind of holds it all together. So now that that's done, we can put these first 3 screws back in. Making sure not to go too tight. You want to just snug them up. So there you go. Nice and snug, and one last screw, so that's the last one. Alright, so that's all the screws back together. It feels nice and tight. There are some screws, I think, in the bottom that hold this thing on, and don't see any sense in taking that off. This thing just sort of clicks in and out. So we can snap that back in. Making sure to align it. It does have an angle, so you have to put the tall part at the back and the 2 skinnier parts towards the front. And yeah, so that's all good to go. Let's go ahead and click this thing back in. So the way it works is, you want to make sure that the clips go into these square pieces and then the springs go onto those cross-shaped studs. So just kind of freehand it, align it with the studs like that. And then once they're on, you can kind of click those little pieces in there like that. Oops. All right, so yeah, that has gotten caught, so I need to uncatch that. And we'll just kind of try and get this back together. These crazy springs. So yeah, and once you get it like this, just kind of try to visually align it so that those 2 clippy pieces go in their little square holes. And then you can push it like that. Now they're in. I'm just visually looking to make sure that the spring hasn't caught or done anything weird. And it looks good, so push it in the rest of the way. It clicks in, and there it is, back together. So just to recap, this is the razor that it was designed for. Just to recap, yeah, if you have the problem with the pump not working, do not take it apart. Just open it like this. And you can use some kind of a little small tool, something like this, or if you have like a long skinny screwdriver, you can reach in there and you can manipulate this little impeller blade directly through that hole, and you can get it unstuck and working again. And that should be enough. But if it's like me and it's not enough and it keeps happening, just get yourself a pipette like this, or some other way of dumping isopropyl alcohol down into that hole, and you basically just flood it with isopropyl, shake it around, let it drain out, and that would be how I would go about fixing this, because it is completely smooth now, no resistance at all, just totally smooth as I manipulate those impeller blades. So that's really the fix. Don't bother taking this thing apart. I'm sure that'll work perfectly fine now for years to come. So yeah, that was the disassembly. So yeah, if you have any comments or suggestions or anything, just leave it down below. I appreciate any feedback you guys have. I'm not going to edit this video. That's too much effort for me. So, all right. Hope you have a good rest of the day, and good luck.